Technology has changed the role of a designer immensely.
Multiple disciplines are now sort of becoming one thing.
I love art. I love geometry.
Print graphic design, motion graphics. I like holograms, I like UI.
I draw with computers, make pictures, I make sounds, make shapes, make color.
What kind of weird things I can make the computer do, see what kind of weird things I can make the projector do.
Putting two different things together to combine something new.
I work on a tablet because it's a lot easier to iterate.
We now have the ability to work anywhere, everywhere, with anyone.
There isn't a limitation to what you do.
Being able to just learn and explore.
Now you can prototype and make things that you had to rely on other people to make for you.
There's so much available and so many cool things that you can do if you just spend the time to experiment and try out a new piece of software.
Experimentation is how things change.
When you get really involved in creating something, you sometimes lose yourself in it.
I feel like the Joker in Batman when I'm making work.
You have to lay everything on the table, turn it upside down, risk something, and then be open to the results.
Most of the new things I try are gonna suck.
Somebody has to misbehave and go against that expectation and improve. That's how improvements happen.
The opposite is boredom. The opposite is giving the people what they want.
You're building on the ideas of others to create new things.
The social media thing has sort of created a sense of urgency where you should be making things on a regular basis.
Technology has made it an awful lot easier for an idea to keep free-flowing.
A picture that leads to a video, that leads to music, that leads to another blog, that leads to a person, and you're so excited that you feel comfortable just reaching out to them.
Someone else being involved, having them there to be able to bounce my ideas off of.
People whom you collaborate with, they stretch you and they push you to new horizons. They push you to do things that are different and new.
Whatever I decide I want to do, I can figure out how to do that.
It's almost like you've got permission now.
To push our technique to somewhere we haven't been before.
To say, this is me, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm doing it.
To create new things that we've never even thought about before.
We can stick our finger in the stream and change the direction of it.
Now that you have access to anything you need, there's really nothing stopping you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adobe CEO, Shantanu Narayan.
Thank you. Welcome and thank you again for joining us here today at the beautiful Alice Tully Hall here in New York City, as well as for everybody who's joining us on our webcast. I'm incredibly excited to be here today. One of the things that really energizes me about the job that we do is all the cool innovation that our teams work on all around the world, every single day. But gatherings like this are also honestly a celebration of not just what comes out of their efforts, but what comes out of the community efforts, all the beautiful work that was out there, random acts of creativity that we call it, as well as the folks on the video who were talking about their experiences and how nothing can stop them now, as well as some of the terrific art that you see on the screen here behind me. Some of the people who've created that are in the audience. Thank you and welcome again for joining us today. We all live in this exhilarating time of change. It plays out every day in our lives. As consumers, we're bombarded by messages everywhere, on mobile devices, on tablets, to get us to engage or transact something with business everywhere we go. Today, advertising is content, and content is advertising, because brands are not just about beautifully storyboarded print campaigns. In fact, they're as much about those touching or funny stories that you see go viral on YouTube. Publishing has been upended, where we think about what's happening to dailies as well as monthlies and how they have to evolve. Because all of us as consumers expect relevant, interactive, personalized material wherever we are on the go, not to mention rich and interactive. And every business, it doesn't matter whether you're in retail or financial services, every business is being consumerized. At one time, it used to be that only consumer brands had the monopoly on creating engaging content and marketing. And we were content to let other business-to-business communications be dull and static. The bar has been raised. The bar has been raised for every single person. And we all expect to be engaged and entertained by every business wherever we go. Because the lines are starting to blur. The lines are starting to blur between a website, a publication, an ad, a game. And the expectations that we have of this richness, interactivity, and personalization continue to rise. And that's why we think there's not a more exciting time for innovation than right now, whether you're in the business of creating technology or whether you're in the business of creating design and creating experiences. The nature of content is becoming increasingly more complex. Our expectations are becoming increasingly high, and businesses all around the world are scrambling to respond and live up to these expectations. We have to reimagine the creative process. We at Adobe have a vision to bring together this creativity and business, to bring together content and commerce, art and science, and to advance our mission, which has remained the same, which is to change the world through digital experiences. And we believe that with the Creative Cloud, we are reimagining the creative process with the world's best tools, mobile apps, services, and community. And with Adobe Marketing Cloud, we have the most comprehensive solution right now for marketers in the industry, combining content and data to manage and optimize this customer experience and design across web, mobile, as well as the social channels. And we believe that when we put these two clouds together for the entire content lifecycle, magic really can begin to happen. We can streamline workflows, we can break down organizational silos, and bring the best of creative expression and digital insights to have greater business impact. And this vision, driving this, has been such an incredibly invigorating journey for us at Adobe. But at the heart of all of this still is Adobe's Creative Cloud. We had this belief that we had to reimagine the entire creative process, to innovate at a faster pace, to deal with all of the technology, tectonic shifts were happening, to be able to provide better pricing to attract new customers to our platform. And the journey began for us 5 years ago with a small pilot that we ran for subscriptions in Australia. And with this belief that customers would benefit from staying up to date with technology. When computing power began to move from the desktop to smartphones, to the tablets and the cloud, we knew that this was an opportunity for us to reimagine how all of you, how creatives would work in the future. And we committed ourselves to this vision at Adobe, to move from selling box software to delivering subscriptions through the cloud. From providing the desktop apps that you know and love to a seamless set of tools and services that lets you work anywhere and create anywhere. And honestly, from us transacting with you once every 12 months or 18 months with a product cycle to having an ongoing dialogue with you every single day. And in just a short few years, we are thrilled. We're thrilled that we have over 2 million paid Creative Cloud subscribers and millions more in our community engaging with us every single day. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this journey, for sharing your enthusiasm, your creativity, your ideas, and most importantly, your feedback. It is truly a shared effort, and we're thrilled to innovate on your behalf. We have over 10,000 Adobe employees who come to work every day, and we derive our inspiration from what you do with our tools and services. But today is about introducing great new innovations that we're working on your behalf. And in order to do that, let me introduce to you the man who is driving our entire vision and product strategy for the Creative Cloud, the person who leads up our business, David Wadhwani. Congratulations, David.
Great. Thanks,
awesome job. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Shantanu. And welcome, everyone. How are you guys doing? Good, good. I couldn't be more excited to be here. I've been at Adobe for 12 years, and we have never had this many product announcements in one day. So I'm super excited to walk you guys through all of that. But before I do, I wanted to share a little context behind what we see and how we see the industry evolving, because that sets the tone for what we build and how we deploy what we build. Now, over the last few years, we've been very focused on these three trends: mobile, social, and cloud. And in fact, if you stop and think about it, the entire industry has been obsessed with them, and for good reason. Any one of these changes would have meant a major shift in how we consume content and applications. But the fact that all three of them happened at the same time together in a short period of time, I believe represents a tectonic shift that is going to forever change how we consume content and applications. And you don't have to look very far to see what this means and how big an impact this has had. In the last 5 years, roughly since we shipped CS5, so 5 years, the number of people connected to the internet has grown a relatively modest 1.5x. But if you look at the impact on mobile, social, and cloud, it's an order of magnitude bigger, or multiple orders of magnitude bigger. Social networking, there are 10 times more people now using social networking than just 5 years ago. Mobile app downloads, 100 times more mobile apps are downloaded now than 5 years ago. And cloud storage, we see 250 times the number of people now storing their assets and retrieving their assets from the cloud than we saw just 5 years ago. So as we all change how we consume content and applications, organizations have to change how they create content and applications. And we see this across the board. In the publishing industry, if you take magazine publishers as an example, they're making their magazines available now as applications on tablets and phones. They're using the cloud to integrate live feeds, content feeds into those publications on these devices to keep them fresh. And they're using social networking to syndicate that content out and broaden the audience. We're seeing a very similar pattern in consumer applications, maybe with a little bit more focus on phones relative to tablets, but they're connected and they're social, and they're using social to share what's being done in these consumer applications to build a community. And they're using that community as an opportunity to drive more usage of those applications, that viral loop that we always talk about when we talk about consumer applications. And this is not lost on marketers. Marketers are using mobile, social, and cloud to build buzz and drive a very different engagement with their users and their consumers and their communities. And even enterprise applications are getting in the game with private social clouds and things to really drive a much different user experience. And with everyone doing this, it's hard to imagine any app that ships today without these technologies already built in. And therefore, by definition, the major innovations of the last decade are now the commodities of the next decade. And so we all start doing what we start doing, which is to look for that next frontier that's going to differentiate our apps and our content from the competitors, and that are going to engage our customers differently. And we believe that new frontier is experience. Now at Adobe, we're lucky enough to work with the world's biggest brands and the most innovative companies. And we see all over the place that design-led innovation is taking a hold, and that it really matters. And what we see in these companies is that they approach experience and recognize that it's multifaceted. Your brand is not just your logo, a design is not just an app interface, and a campaign does not stand on its own. It's part of a whole system. And these companies are really embracing the fact that you have to design an end-to-end system as one single way for your customers, your community, to engage with what you build. And the really cool thing about this is that creatives, as a result, are not just pulled in at the end of the process to make something look good. They're being asked to be part of the entire process. They're being asked to be the strategists. They're being asked to be the decision makers. You're on the front lines now, helping your company or your clients decide where to invest and what to do. And we wanted to see if this trend that we were seeing was truly broad-based or somehow just limited to the companies that we work with. So we conducted a creativity research study, the largest we've done in a long time. And the results were overwhelming. This is really broad-based. Here's what you told us as part of this research. First, the pace of change is accelerating. 3 in 4 of you told us that the industry has changed more in the last 5 years than the prior 50. You're also telling us that you're already living in this new world. half of you are already creating on mobile, but you're saying you're really unsatisfied with the options you have to create on mobile devices. 70% of you are already building mobile applications, and 3/4 are working across disciplines, and this is really important. We see photographers breaking out of their old silos of just photography. We see videographers thinking more broadly. We see designers thinking more broadly. And that's critical as you start to design and define a really broad experience that engages customers across the entire spectrum. But probably the most important thing that came out in the study was that you're super, super optimistic. Most of you said your roles are going to significantly change in the next 3 years. And that change is going to make you more important to your organization and let you have a bigger impact with your clients. So lots of energy and lots of optimism. But there was one concern, that you're being asked now to create more than you've ever had to create before, and you're being asked to get it done faster than you've been ever asked to get it done before. And you're telling us that you're working now in an increasingly complex and increasingly real-time world. This is the world we built Creative Cloud for, to keep you ahead of these trends and ahead of these demands, and it's clearly resonating with a lot of you. We already have over 2.3 million members on Creative Cloud and expect another million to join by the end of the year. And so, building on this momentum, I couldn't be more excited to introduce the 2014 release of Creative Cloud. And in this release, you're going to see we have updates to all 3 major pillars of Creative Cloud. First, the world's best creative desktop applications have major innovation that we'll be sharing with you today. Second, we're introducing a whole new family of mobile applications. And third, the integrated services that connect these desktop apps and these mobile apps to your identity, your assets, and your community are also going through a big change today. So enough talking, let's get to it, and let's start with our desktop applications, where we have a major set of updates to all of our key desktop apps. If you look at all of the changes since CS6 to the release today, we have almost 1,000 updates to those desktop applications. The primary areas of focus, one, around devices and formats. Tablets, smartphones, cameras, they're coming out at an incredible pace, and we're keeping you up to date and ahead of that curve. We're also seeing format changes. HTML5 and CSS continue to evolve, but new formats are becoming commonplace, like Ultra HD for video workflows. So you'll see a lot of that from us. 2, performance. We're leveraging the incredible new GPU architectures that are coming out on laptops and desktops and giving you every ounce of performance we can give you so you can get your jobs done faster. 3 is productivity. We've worked more in the last couple of years on the commonly used features, the features that by investing a disproportionate amount of our time smoothing out and improving, we're creating a disproportionate benefit for you because you use those features all the time. And last, but certainly not least, Adobe Magic. That stuff that some engineer somewhere at Adobe, one of those tens of thousands of people that Shantanu talked about, comes up with this incredible idea that suddenly takes something that was impossible and make it possible overnight. So for this, we're going to start with the video segment, then we'll go into design, and then move on to photography before getting into mobile. So in video, we are on a roll. We are now the undisputed market leader. We won movies like Gone Girl, sports events like the World Cup, late night shows and broadcasts like Saturday Night Live here. They're all moving to Premiere-based video workflows. And there's a really simple reason for this. We are simply more serious about pro-quality video than anyone else on the market. And the areas that we've been working on based on these relationships we have, one is around workflows, making sure that the workflows across our video applications are streamlined and get rid of the time-consuming act of rendering video out and back in, really smoothing that out. 2 is around performance. We're leveraging the GPUs, as I said earlier, to squeeze every bit of performance out, which then lets you stay ahead of the demand, the increasing demand for Ultra HD. So for that, I'd like to invite up Jason Levine to show us what we have going on in video. Jason?
Hey, Jason. Thank you. Hello, New York! Hello, world!
Oh, it's such an amazing pleasure and joy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, David. And really, I just want to get right to it and dive into all these new things that we're bringing to this 2014 release of the CC apps for video. So the first area that I'm going to focus on is in productivity. And really, over the last year, one of the things that we tried to do is remove a lot of the pain points in the editing process, particularly where you're dealing with things like color grading. And if you take a look at this sequence that I have here, we've got some beautiful footage provided to us by Discovery that really is in need of some color love. And traditionally, the color grading workflow has been very render intensive, right? If we wanted to work on this in SpeedGrade, we would render this out of Premiere Pro. We'd bring it into SpeedGrade. We'd perform our grade. We'd render it back out, bring it into Premiere, look at it and go, ah, bad. And we'd bring it back into SpeedGrade again and do it again. And this rendering over and over again is far from being productive. Am I right, David?
You're right. And just so you guys know, we did not let Jason have his coffee this morning. This is his natural state.
So, we decided to remove the pain of rendering from Premiere Pro, sending it over to SpeedGrade by introducing Direct Link to Adobe SpeedGrade. So now, directly from the Premiere Pro timeline, I can send this sequence to SpeedGrade, and what you're actually seeing here is the Premiere Pro timeline in SpeedGrade. It looks the same, it feels the same, it functions the same, and now we can really start to tackle the task at hand. Now, you'll notice we have lots of new looks, lots of new presets in SpeedGrade to help you, again, get started. Presets that you're familiar with, the same types of presets that you might see in Lightroom or Photoshop. But what if our design department has already determined the look that they want? They actually want me to match a particular frame from an image that they took. Well, we can do that now as well. So for instance, on this particular instance of these Mustangs here, they sent us this image of the owl. And they said, OK, match the sort of tones and colors to this. Well, I can simply select this clip of the Mustangs. I can use this button here, which is Match Look to Master Playhead. And just like that, it applies it. Now, again, here's the before. Here's the after. But David, you may have noticed that actually we have a couple instances of these Mustangs in the timeline. These are what we know as subclips, which actually came from one longer master clip. And naturally, in the past, we would have had to have graded each one of these instances one by one. But now, in both SpeedGrade and Premiere Pro, we have this concept of master clips. So simply by selecting this subclip here, I can denote this as a master clip inside of SpeedGrade, come back over to my Match Shot button, click on this, just like that, it applies it, and let's go ahead and wind back. Now you can see it's applied that color correction across all three instances. I can go up to the button up here, which allows me to non-destructively, without rendering, send this back to Premiere Pro, does it like that, back in the Premiere Pro timeline, play it, it's real time, it's 2K, 4K, resolution independent. Can you feel it, New York? Can you feel it, David?
I can absolutely feel it. I'm right here.
It's coming. It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. While we're on the subject, before we lose our attention on it, really quickly, there are two really important things that you just showed that are very serious. One is that the workflows were really smooth, right? The Premiere timeline showed up in SpeedGrade and back forward.
Yes.
So really editor friendly. That's a big deal for us.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is, in the past, you would have had to render that out, color grade it, render it back out, and load it in. So huge time saver.
Amazing time saver. And it changes the way you think about doing production in our apps.
Yep.
Now, taking that a step further, David, earlier you talked about the Adobe Magic. And of course, we wanted to bring some Adobe Magic into the video apps as well. So here we have a scene. You can see I've got this car driving down the road. And very commonly in video, just like in stills, we have a need to do masking, right? And in this case, perhaps we want to mask out the license plate. Or, again, in commercials, TV, you often see this in interviews. They mask out or blur out someone's face to conceal their identity. Or they mask or blur out a logo if they don't have license to use it. Well, again, you could do this in Premiere Pro in the past, but this was a fairly manual, labor-intensive process just to do it, to animate it, to do all this work. We really wanted to make it easier, so we took some technology from After Effects and placed it inside of Premiere Pro. So what I'm going to do here is select this clip. Let's go up to our effects, and I'm going to add a fast blur. And when I click over to the Fast Blur Effects controls, what you will now see is that we actually have the ability to create an ellipse mask or a 4-point polygon mask. You now have masking capabilities on every effect in Premiere Pro. So to do that, all I'm simply going to do is choose my 4-point polygon mask. Let's go ahead and zoom up a little bit here. And I'm simply going to draw my mask on the license plate like this and add the blur. Now, David, you may recall in the past, because of course, again, this is video, what we had to do to actually make this mask follow it, right?
Yeah, it was obviously very time-consuming. It was keyframe to keyframe because the car moves.
Right. And that's ultimately not really what we want. Well, again, Adobe Magic, we took some of the tech from After Effects. We took that rigid mask tracker that we introduced back in October. We brought it into Premiere Pro CC 2014. And now, right inside Premiere Pro, right on the video, right in Canvas, you can see that the tracking is happening with the blur. Yes.
That's awesome.
Even as we turn,
it's following.
Look at what's happening here.
It's like you've seen it for the first time.
It's the first time I've seen this. So here's kind of the finished version, David. And as you know, again, Adobe Magic, but also Adobe Control. We want to give you complete control, right? You want to be able to tweak every element of this. So using our dynamic link technology, of course, we can send this from Premiere Pro to After Effects non-destructively. And when we click over to After Effects, what you'll see is that the same mask has been applied, the same fast blur has been applied. And if you take a look at a slightly more finished version that I've done here, actually what's interesting about this, note that, of course, now I've added multiple masks. On each of those masks, I've done a little something different. On the car, I've done a little color correction just around the car. On each of the headlights, I've added masks to brighten them up. And then on each of those masks, I've tracked them, and I've added effects. Because now in this release of After Effects, we have the ability to have masks with isolated effects. So again, this is something people have been asking for. It's amazing, and thanks to these new compositing options, this really makes this entire process so much easier, so much more productive and user-friendly, and really, people have been asking for this, and now we can deliver it to them. Right. It's amazing.
This is a big deal with one mask. When you have multiple masks like this, it saves that much more time. It's really, really going to be a big productivity gain.
Absolutely. And again, this is just pieces of that Adobe Magic coming through, making the workflow between these applications even more seamless. Well, David, the very last thing that I'm going to show you here is really probably the most exciting. It's the most exciting thing I'm going to show right now. Can you believe it?
I can.
How could I possibly get more excited? I can. What you're actually seeing here is what David talked about before, leveraging performance and this notion of Ultra HD, 4K, 5K, 6K. And what we're actually looking at here is a timeline which contains a mixture of native 4K, 5K, and 6K media playing right off of the Premiere Pro timeline natively. And how are we doing that? We've got new GPU debayering in this release. We're taking advantage of all the GPUs in your new machines. And the thing is, we know 4K better than anybody because we've been doing it longer. We've been doing it natively since the beginning. Does that sound like sales talk, David?
It sure does.
Yes, it does. Does that sound like marketing talk, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it does. And it's true. Would I lie to you?
I'm not going to answer that. However, I do want to ask one thing. How would this look in an older version like CS6 because of the changes that have happened in the architecture?
Right. Well, the thing is, with formats like 6K, Red Dragon 6K, this wasn't even invented at that time. And when we moved to Dragon 6K, they kind of changed the game a little, so we had to make changes in these new releases. So you wouldn't even be able to play 6K. And with the 4K and 5K, unpredictable, because quite simply, we weren't leveraging the GPUs like we are today. We weren't really taking advantage of all the performance-enhancing things that the new hardware does to give you the best experience. And David, this is really just a taste of what's coming to the 2014 release of Creative Cloud for video.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
So the completely unpredictable Jason Levine. So integration across our video applications, reducing the need for that costly render step, the best Ultra HD workflows on the market, hands down, and a little bit of that Adobe magic with the mask tracking you saw in Premiere. It's this kind of continuous innovation that has made us the undisputed leader in video. Thanks again, Jason. So now let's move from video over to design. And I think that designers actually are probably facing some of the biggest challenges and seeing some of the biggest opportunities in the creative world from our vantage point. You're increasingly working in a complex world. What you make has to work in print and digital. It has to work in the web and across mobile applications. It has to run on the desktop, in a tablet, and on mobile. And more and more, we're seeing the need for what you make actually work across media. So we had a really big focus for this. This is probably the single largest area of focus that we took for the 2014 release. And the areas that we looked as the primary areas of innovation, first was around productivity enhancements. You have more to do, you have less time to do it, so we wanted to make you much more efficient in what you do. The second was around empowering you to build and publish web experiences that work across devices without having to focus on the complexities of the code. And third was to help you take advantage of what we see as a significant opportunity for the designers in 3D and really unlock some amazing potential and make it much more approachable than it's been in the past. And to show this off, I'd like to invite up Paul Gabay and Paul Tranny.
How many designers do we have out there? Let's have a round of applause.
All right.
All right. And if you're not a designer, how many people love great design? Can you feel it, David?
I'm spent from the last one.
Don't worry about that. So we have just a ton of amazing stuff to show that's really focused on designers. And I'm going to kick it off with a product that designers love and use every day, and that is Photoshop. Now, if you are a designer, chances are you love fonts. But if you get a PSD file from somebody, a Photoshop file from somebody, and you don't have those fonts installed, you're probably familiar with a dialog that looks a little bit like this inside of Photoshop. I hear laughing, yes. So now, Photoshop does a good job of telling me which fonts I'm missing, but it doesn't actually help me solve the problem until now. Let's take a look at what happens when I open up a Photoshop file where I do not have the fonts installed in the new version of Photoshop. And you see, I now get the new missing fonts dialog. Now, this is similar to the missing fonts dialog that you see in Illustrator and InDesign, but what's really, really cool about this, it is now powered by Creative Cloud, which means not only has Photoshop found the fonts recognized the fonts that I'm missing, but we've also done a search in Creative Cloud of thousands of the Typekit desktop fonts that are included with your Creative Cloud subscription, found those fonts and made them available to you. So rather than me having to go online, search for my fonts, download them and install them, instead of all of that, David, all I have to do is click on this little button here that says Resolve Fonts, and it's done for me.
Yes, and for those of you who do not know Typekit, as Paul said, we have thousands of fonts in Typekit. If you were to go out and buy every one of those fonts individually, it would cost you over $40,000. And you get all of those fonts as part of your Creative Cloud membership.
That's right, David. And with that $40,000 worth of fonts, I would actually like to design with them and use them. And doing that, the Photoshop team has made that easier for me as well. Now, it used to be in Photoshop, if I wanted to play around with fonts on the screen, I'd open up the dialog, I'd find a font, close it, see what it looks like, I'd go back and forth and do that again. But not anymore. The Photoshop team has now added live preview of fonts on hovers, which means that as I move over the fonts, you are actually seeing them update live. It's pretty awesome. I told you they would applaud. I told you. You find the font that I like. It's playful. It's easy. I find the font I want. Fantastic. And I'm done. It looks great. So, David, besides loving fonts, which of course we all do, as a designer, we also love precision as well, right? We spend a lot of time putting our designs together. We want them to look really good. Now, what I want to do is take this blue circle. I want to copy it 5 times across over here. And of course, I want that to be exact. So in previous versions, I'd pull out my rulers, my guides, and sort of put them all together there. But I'm going to show you, David, the new smarter smart guides inside of Photoshop. When I copy this over, what I'm going to do is select this, I'm going to make a copy, and you're going to see real-time measurements as I actually move the circle over. That's right, guys. All that time being saved as I move it over, position everything exactly the way that I want it. It looks fantastic. Now, speaking of precision, there's something I notice here that's not right. That microphone in the middle, that's an old-style microphone. And David, I could try and make this change, but actually I can't because this icon's not actually inside of Photoshop. What the Photoshop team has done is they have upgraded their smart objects to be linked smart objects, which means I now can include files that are external to my Photoshop file. This is actually an Illustrator file, and I'm going to turn it over to my Illustrator buddy over here, Paul. Paul, I remember asking you for this new icon microphone, and I don't see it here. Can you get that updated for me?
Let's take care of that right now and say we take care of it. So at this point, notice how I am in Illustrator.
I think the mic needs to be turned on.
So starting in Illustrator, what I'm going to do, I'm actually just working on
Nope. We're going to do a handheld mic. Going old school, actually. If you could take a picture of that, that could work for that.
All right. All right, is this on? You guys can hear me okay? Yes, all right, there we are. Perfect, awesome. All right, let's get started because I have a lot to do. In fact, I'll only do this with one hand. I want to jump in and just draw, okay? At this point, even using our trusted pencil, okay, using the pencil tool, and this is what I do, and I love how accurate it is, but it's almost too accurate. Okay, horrible there. I can jump in and use the smooth tool to smooth it out, but what I'd rather do is use this rebuilt pencil tool, in fact, taking it from accurate to smooth, otherwise known as awesome. And at this point, I'm not even, again, using one hand, not even being that accurate, but you can see how smooth it makes that line. So enable me to do it right the first time. Awesome, productive. Let's move on, because there's more I need to talk about. Check this out. I use the pen tool all the time, even as I drop a Bezier point. Well, I wasn't sure where that next line is going to be, but now I get that projection. Obviously, that projected line, I could see where it's going, clicking, and ending right there. In fact, what I'm going to do as I roll over it, check this out. Let's try this. Bear with me, guys. Steady, steady. I'm just holding down the Option key, but that's all I need to do. If I need to manipulate these Bezier points, I don't need to do it individually. I can adjust it accordingly to get those smooth lines. All right, so here's my final illustration. You'll actually see that later, but I do need to get back to that icon that you requested, Paul. And sure, I could recreate this if I want to, but you know what? This is all about productivity, guys. In fact, remember, we're sharing a folder, but what I want to introduce you to are Creative Cloud Market assets, actually, is what I have in here. Creative Cloud Market, this is coming soon, giving you the ability to have access to thousands of images, royalty-free. I could jump in, grab what I want, everything from placement to icons to illustrations, images. In fact, I want to search for a microphone, so I'm going to jump in here and do that right now.
While Paul is balancing that, just so you guys know, this is something that we have gone out and personally curated over 20,000 assets, and we're going to continue to grow it. You get it as part of the ongoing growing library of assets that come with Creative Cloud. Just like we have thousands of fonts, we now have tens of thousands of assets, and we're going to continue to improve that over time.
Exactly. And while you were saying that, notice how I did actually download that microphone right there. And if I just select it really fast, I can start to modify it. And again, this is vector. I could use it wherever I want, if I'm in Illustrator or Photoshop. It's available to me. And again, since it's an illustration, I can change it, saving this file without the circle. And I'm going to send it back over to you, Paul, because in your illustration, you should actually see that file. All right?
Thank you, Paul. And Paul, I got to give you a round, man. That was really, really good.
Thank you.
Well done. Paul's exactly right. And this is huge. I want you guys to recognize this as we do this. Whether Paul is across the stage or whether he's across the world, we're working together with Creative Cloud right now. We have the same folder, the same collaboration. So Paul made that change. He saved it. It came through on Creative Cloud on my side. And if we take a look over at that microphone, we should see it update live. This is huge, guys, for designers working on teams together. Updates automatically. Now, David, besides loving my fonts and loving my precision and working with my buddy Paul, who's, you know, obviously getting his mic fixed right now, I also love to just be creative naturally. And as I look down here and I see the front man, I want to do something really interesting here. I want to take this text and I want to push it behind that lead singer that's in focus. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to grab that layer. I'm going to duplicate it real quickly. And I'm going to take that duplicated layer. I'm going to move it above my text layer there. So I've kind of created a layer sandwich. I've got an image, I've got the text, and I've got an image below it. And now what I want to do is I want to be able to select the lead singer and mask out everything else so that text will show up underneath it. Now, I could have done this previously inside of Photoshop, but it would take quite a while to be able to select this guy in focus, but not anymore. I'm going to use the new focus area selection feature inside of Photoshop, and this happens really quick, guys, so check this out. I'm going to click on this right now. Photoshop is figuring out what is in focus, masking out everything else, and boom, the text just came through automatically. There's the before, there is the after, and that is awesome. And David, this is just a few of the amazing features we've added in Photoshop for designers.
Yeah, so like we said, productivity, productivity, productivity. This has been a clear focus for us for this release, the 2014 release of Creative Cloud for designers. Everything from the market assets that we showed you, the 20,000 plus market assets, to the fonts, the thousands of fonts, to the shared folders combined with the Link Smart objects. So these guys were able to collaborate much more easily. The missing font stuff, the layout guides, the smoother drawing, a real strong focus on productivity. In fact, way too many productivity features to show you today. But we did put together a really short video to give you a little bit more of a flavor. So let's roll that and then move on to the other designer features.
In Photoshop, there are improved layer comps, where you can now modify the properties of multiple layer comps at one time, or even have your layer comps inside smart objects that can be controlled. In Illustrator, new GPU acceleration for Windows lets you work faster on Windows 7 or 8 computers using supported graphics cards. This allows you to preview and pan and zoom complex graphics with little to no lag. We've also added live shapes, which enable you to quickly transform a rectangle into a complex shape with a mix of rounded, chamfered, or inverted corners. You can even scale or rotate the object while easily returning it to its original position at any time. And when you close a path, you now have more precise control when modifying that point. In InDesign, we've simplified tables so that it's much easier to move columns and rows where you want them. And when you update InDesign, it automatically checks for previous versions and migrates your presets and settings seamlessly. And in Dreamweaver, with Live Element Quick View, you can see the structure of your HTML, whether it's static or dynamic, and you can easily move things around and make changes without worrying about whether you've copied and pasted all the code. And you can now edit in Live View, whether it's changing text or inserting an image. And you can even insert HTML content right into Live View, helping you work faster.
Great, so that shows you, that combined with what Paul and Paul showed you maybe about 10 of the features that we've introduced. We have tons more. Check it out, play with it. I think you're going to find this to be an incredible release for productivity. So now with all that time we just saved you, what are you going to do? And so we wanted to shift now and look at the Adobe magic that we have for designers. And you told us in the creativity research I was talking about earlier that one of the most important skills for designers to develop over the next 12 months was around 3D. So let's see what we're doing, and I'll give away the punchline, where we're going to make 3D as easy to use and as natural to use as 2D is today. So Paul, let's take a look at that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, and we're actually going to start with this image, this Audi image. And typically you'd schedule a photo shoot, right? You'd hire a driver, hopefully on a closed course. Hopefully the weather's right. Lots of expenses, not that flexible, because what if the client comes back and asks for a different shot that I don't have? Certain amount of risk running that I'm doing there. But what I'd rather do is I would rather use 3D, in this case, in Photoshop, just as easy as 2D. In fact, here's my scene. And again, I'm going to import a 3D file right here, just as easy as importing an image. You can see here's my model. Okay, at this point, check this out. This 3D panel, I can manipulate this any way I want. So I can put it in perspective with that ground plane, as you can see right there. Okay,
this is a really big deal. Yeah, I want to just spend a minute on this. This is what you're doing here is 2D, 3D compositing. And as 3D printing and the excitement around that is growing, we're seeing a lot more models come on the play, in play, and we're seeing a lot more utilization actually moving back into the design world as a result of that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's obviously pretty easy to composite, but this is what you'd have to do. You really take clues from this image. In the case of that light source, well, again, I don't have to paint on that image. It's just a matter of pointing that light source so it's coming sort of from behind that vehicle. That's all I did is just adjusted that. Easy enough, right? Still looks a little plastic, right? It's because I actually want this car to reflect that background. Okay, so I'm just selecting that image, saying, hey, you know what? Go ahead and reflect that background. You can see right down there, and I can zoom in a little closer. I didn't have to paint that. It does it for me. I can make it shinier, less shiny. I have that control. In fact, let's do a little more. I noticed that there's a little bit, I need to add a little bit of a reflection. Easy enough. I didn't duplicate a layer, do anything like that. Make it a little rough, integrate it into that scene pretty easily. And again, this is 3D. This is fun as I dive into this. You know, I rotate it around. I have that full control if I decide I want this car driver.
And that's a really important thing. I'm sure you guys all work with clients that never change their minds. But if you do, if you imagine him going out and doing this photo shoot, coming back, and then having the client ask for the car in a different position, it would have been impossible to recreate that scene at the very least, and it would have been extraordinarily expensive. So huge time saver by using 3D and these virtual worlds to create and design.
Yeah, definitely. And at any time, you can always render that layer and use those tools that you're used to, which is exactly what I did right down here. For this render, and actually I want to introduce you to the blur galleries. Check this out. I want this car to look like it's in motion. What do? I use a spin blur. I just add those spin blurs. You can see 2 of them already right there. And I can control not only its shape, its size, but also how fast it goes. I have full control over that. If that's done, I want to do one more in here really fast. As I take a look at this scene, in fact, right back there, I'm going to introduce you to path blur as well, because I want to add motion to that background, OK? So there happens to already be one path in here. In fact, you can see it right here as I twirl this down. You see that line? Hey, I want a path blur going the other direction, right, for this side of the road. What about one coming up from the bottom? Why not? Let's do that. Hey, how about if we bend it like it's going around the corner? You have it, guys. That is path blur. That's done. You couldn't do this in CS6. You just would be very, very difficult. And there you have that full motion. And of course, you have, again, that final vehicle. And again, through the power of 3D, if we want that daytime scene, we can have that daytime scene just like that.
Thanks. Huge time saver now using 3D to create these scenes. But with the power of 3D, there are new frontiers being established, too, with 3D printing. So let's see what we're doing there.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it. In fact, I'm going to start out really simple. All I have here is a shape layer. So just selecting that shape layer of that logo, I'm going to extrude that shape. So again, this is 3D. I can rotate it around. I have full control. Looks great. In fact, I can manipulate it. Let's stand it up, just like that. And as I start to look at this, I'm thinking, you know, rather than, I don't know, putting a logo on a cup, let's turn this into a cup. So let's taper the bottom. Done. What about the top contour? Let's give it a contour. Oh, that's a little sharp. Don't want to cut our tongue. Smooth it out. Done. Just like that. In fact, let's just give it a nice texture as I jump in here for this. Make sure it is a nice ceramic, just like that. So that's 3D. You guys are thinking, Paul, you don't know anything about cups, right? Because I have that gap. So let's fix that. Edit source, guys. I didn't have to manipulate a mesh. I'm jumping in here. Let's fix it. You guessed it. Patching up that spot.
This is a really big deal. He's editing his 3D model that he created in the 2D world simply by changing the 2D plane. It's going to automatically take place and update the 3D model.
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is I could always jump back in here if I want to tighten it up more, but you could see it's right there. Done. And this is the exciting part. Obviously, this is a 3D model. How do we get it into the real world, if you will? Check it out. 3D printing from Photoshop. Selecting that option. In fact, if you're lucky enough to have a 3D printer, congratulations. But also, you can print directly to it. Don't have one? We got you covered there as well. You could use this online service provider, Shapeways, and check out this long list of various materials you could print to: brass, gold, plastic, steel. We have full-color sandstone, plenty of textures. In fact, I'm going to select glazed for this. I click print, get sent to Shapeways, and then sent to me, to my house, or to this theater here, because I happen to have one right here. If I can present to you, David. There it is, from Photoshop 3D printing. Very powerful.
So made a, all kinds of mic issues. So made a coffee cup 3D printed in about 3 or 4 minutes. Absolutely amazing. Sorry about that, Paul. So 3D growth, and the growth that we're seeing in 3D is truly gratifying. And because the Photoshop team has really been embracing this for years, and we're seeing it come into its own right now. And we are hyper committed to unlocking the power of 3D for designers. And as I said earlier, our goal here is very simple. We want to make 3D as easy to use as 2D has been all along. And we're going to do things like simplifying the utilization by automatically taking care of the lighting, automatically giving you the environment for reflection, and by streamlining that 2D, 3D workflow so it feels like one integrated experience. And we're totally excited to see what you guys do with it. But moving beyond 3D, we see one other area of major interest in the design world, and that's building cutting-edge web experiences. Now, this has always been hard and required an expertise in both design and an expertise in code. So about 2 years ago, we launched Adobe Muse. And it was really focused on the design element and tried to take the complexity of the coding world away from creating great online web experiences. In that 2-year period, Adobe Muse has gone from a small pilot to easily one of the most used applications in our suite. And so I'm thrilled to show you the latest updates we have with Adobe Muse, and really for the first time, debut it on a main stage like this. And we're doing it today for the first time because it is ready for prime time, and it's being used by so many of you already. So Paul, let's see what we're doing with Adobe Muse.
Thanks, David. I am thrilled to be talking about Muse because I believe it really is a revolutionary product for designers. In the same way that PDF allowed designers to be able to reach print, Muse is a tool that allows designers to be able to reach the web. And there's 3 things I want each of you to think about when you think about Muse. I want you to think about design freedom, I want you to think about simplicity, and I want you to think about no coding required. And with that, let's get started. So I'm going to show you just how simple it is to create a new website inside of Muse. I'm going to open this up. The first place we are going to end up is in our visual planning view. Here's where I actually create my web pages. I have my home web page here. If I want to add a new web page, just click on that and add in a new one. There's a menu. If you are familiar with the Pages feature inside of InDesign, this will probably look somewhat familiar to you as well. Create a few pages in there. Looks great. What if I've made a mistake? That's not a problem. If I need to move my page somewhere, it's all visual. Just grab it, drop it down underneath the gallery page. It's underneath the gallery page. Want to move it over to the left over here? Just move it over to the left. Moves over as well. Really, really easy to work with. Now, what I want to do is add some navigation to each of these pages, David. I'm going to use another theme from InDesign, which is the concept of master pages. So I'm going to actually make my change in the master. It's going to flow through to all of these guys. So let's click on that. And I mentioned before, I mentioned design freedom. What do I mean by that, David? I mean that I'm not confined to any templates. If I want to draw out a rectangle on the page, I simply draw out a rectangle on the page. If I want to give it a color, I give it a color. I'm not playing around with HTML or CSS for positioning. I don't need to do that. I just want to focus on the design. If I want to place a logo, I'll go out and grab that. We'll add a logo in here. Of course, if I don't like where that logo is placed, what am I going to do, guys? I'm just going to move the logo to wherever I want it to go, the way it should be when you design. Let's say I want to add a menu onto the page here. I'm going to go over to my widgets panel. This is where we've got all of our really cool widgets. I'm going to pull out a horizontal menu over here. Let's just grab that guy. And I want you to notice that Muse is making my life simpler by actually figuring out my site design and already naming the entries inside of that menu. Now, I'll go back in here again, and let's say we're going to clear out the background on this guy. Make it look nice and clean, maybe move the navigation over just a little bit. Looks great. Let's go back over to my visual planning view. You'll see all of those pages just got updated as a result of that one master page. Now let's throw something a little bit more complex at Muse, David. I'm going to actually open up a website that I've already been working in, and we're going to add in a little bit of animation here. So let's pull up this menu page, and I want these coffee beans to animate down the page as I scroll. So I'm going to grab on this coffee bean, and again, I haven't spent years learning JavaScript. I've spent my time doing design, so how am I going to be able to do that? Well, I'm just going to simply click this motion button right here, and there's a bunch of different settings I can change. I can change the motion path. I'm going to use the defaults that Muse gives me right now, post up that page, and you're going to see that as I start scanning through, I've got coffee beans animating on my screen. Now let's move on. If you don't like coffee beans, that's fine.
To be clear, it animates more than just coffee beans, I think.
I think so, yes, that's right. It's not just the coffee bean animation effect. Let's move on. What else can we do with Muse? I want to show you guys just how simple and easy it is to work with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a full-screen slideshow, and I'm going to add that full-screen slideshow in, let's say, 45 seconds, David. I'm going to try not to speak too fast when I do it, but let's go. So I'm going to pull up a basic slideshow right here. Everything is skinnable and customizable in Muse. I don't want those buttons on the bottom because I'm going to make this full screen, so I'll just take those off. You can see them visually changing. Let's add a few images in here. I'm going to put some of my own images in. Let's grab those guys. Looks great. Have those images load up. Looks good. Let's open our menu up here again. I said I wanted it full screen, right? So I'm not going to go and have to resize. I'm just going to click the full screen button, taken care of for me. I do want a previous and a next button. Let's throw those on there. I'm going to move my previous button. Let's say we're going to move this guy right over here, and we're going to move my next button right over there, and I am done. Let's go preview that guy. Full screen slideshow, guys, in 45 seconds, 43 seconds. I can move back and forth. It looks beautiful. So David, in just a couple of minutes, I have created a website. I've shown you I've been able to add animation. I've been able to create a beautiful screen slideshow, and it's just really that easy to be able to work with.
Yeah, and now obviously the new frontier for Muse is going to be all around mobile and supporting that.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at how we do that. You'll notice that I've been working in a desktop version. I've also got a tablet view, and I've got a phone view. If I click on the phone view, I've already been working in there. You can see it's really easy to be able to get this created and start working with this. I'm using the same assets and the same widgets as I was using on my desktop here. As a matter of fact, this is another version of that slideshow widget right here. Now, one of the great things about the widgets in Muse is that they're device aware, which means that if I'm viewing this website on a touch device, it's actually going to be touch enabled without me having to do anything with it. So given that, what I'm going to do is open this up, and I'm going to click on the thumbnails button. So I've got some thumbnails in there. And then lastly, I want to actually make a phone call, since it's going to be on a phone. I'm going to click on that button. And a really easy, simple way to do this is I'm just going to go to my hyperlinks menu, and instead of typing in the URL, I'm just going to type in a phone number. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do. Let's go take a look at that website now running on the phone. Let's see if that's loaded up. There we go. There's the website. I'm going to scan through it. There's that slideshow. I can scan through it left to right, so you can see those thumbnails. If I click on the thumbnails there, I can see it update. And of course, if I get down to the bottom and hit the phone button, I'm able to make a phone call in just a couple of seconds. Thank you. Now, David, obviously you can see just how easy this is. A lot of people could do this, but Muse really is a tool for creative professionals. Creative professionals use this every day to build websites for their customers. And I'm going to switch gears for a second, and I'm going to be Katie just for a minute. I'm going to go to my beautifully designed website, which I absolutely love, built by my Muse designer. Looks really, really great. And I'm going to come over to the menu section here, David, and I'm going to click on the menu. And I've decided, you know what, my menu changes all the time. I've got the spike here. I ran out of ham, so I'm going to reduce the price, take the ham out of there. But I don't want to hire a designer to make a change like that. And I can host this anywhere, so it's not really tied to any back-end system for me to be able to go back in there. So how am I going to make that change? How am I going to make that change to my website? Well, the Muse team has thought of that as well. And I'd like to introduce to you guys the new in-browser-editing.adobe.com site that the Muse team has built. And anyone who has a Muse site that's been built for them can go right in here, type in the URL of their website, and click Start Editing. They're going to be asked for their own ID, their own password for wherever they're hosting. And David, this is a little bit of that Adobe magic we were talking about. I am now going to be presented with a full working version of my website, but it is editable. I can change the images. I can change the text. You guys know how cool this is. That's right. I mean, could it get any simpler? I am going to go over to the menu here. I'm going to click on the Edit button. I told you that spike is now $10. And not with a hyphen, just $10. And we'll take out that ham, since I don't have any more of that. I'm going to update it. We are going to hit the Publish button, and wait for it. Wait for it. Let's see that little save come up. There it is, success. We're going to go back over to the live menu again. There's the old spike at $12. We are going to hit the refresh button, and I've just updated my website. How awesome is that?
And
so David,
it's clearly you guys understand the power of this. The reason this is so important, and one of the biggest feature requests we've received from designers, is as you guys create the sites and you hand it off to your clients, whether it's a small microsite within a larger company or whether it's a full site for a smaller company, the ability to empower the people that you build it for to be part of that process has huge dividends on it.
It's enormous. Yeah. It's enormous. And so, David, there were 3 things I mentioned when I first came up here. I talked about design freedom, I talked about simplicity, and I talked about no coding required. That's Muse.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. So the 2014 release of Creative Cloud is by far the biggest release we've done for designers in years. And I hope, since there are so many designers here, I hope you guys agree. Muse, the productivity and precision that enables you to build and publish websites with high fidelity across devices without the complexities of code. 3D to really unlock that power and that potential for the imagination and really change creative expression in a very fundamental way. And tons of productivity updates that let you do all of this in record time. We're super excited about what this means for designers. So now let's move. We've done video. We've done design. Let's move to photography. And as you guys know, photography is at the core of who we are at Adobe. We started the journey about 25 years ago, and we've had in that time an unrelenting focus on innovation and quality. In fact, I'd say that the early successes we saw with Photoshop actually helped establish credibility in the digital photography world. And as digital photography grew, we introduced products like Lightroom to help deal with the complexity of the fact that now there were suddenly more and more digital images floating around to help manage all of the workflows associated with that. And today, we feel that we're at another major inflection point. We're all taking pictures on our phones. We're all managing our pictures across devices, or at least trying to. And we're sharing them with friends, family, and clients on an unparalleled basis. And so interest in this space of digital photography has never been bigger, and we see more and more people interested in doing really fascinating things with photographs. So what we wanted to do was announce today we're taking another big step forward in photography, and I'd like to invite up Terry White to show us what we're up to.
Thanks, David. All right. Anyone here a photographer? Great. If you're not a photographer, have you ever had a photo taken of you? That should be everyone else. So here I am in Lightroom. And Lightroom, for any professional photographer, we know the power of Lightroom and Photoshop, especially working together. And I hope to show you some of that today. So what I've got is I've got a Lightroom catalog open. I've got hundreds of photos here. But really, the power of Lightroom is in the organization. Putting these photos in collections so that we can see our favorites, we can see our portfolios, we can see them organized any way we want. So I've got some of my favorites selected, and to create a collection, all I have to do is just click a button, create the collection, name it, we'll call it favorites, and we'll include it in a collection set, which is like a set of collections. And now that I've got that there, I can go in, and of course, I can pick and choose which ones I want to rearrange, just drag and drop them, put them in any order I want. And that's great. And as you can see, I've got some other collections here. For example, I've got one of my portfolios, my travel portfolio. I've got my landscapes portfolio. I've got an on-the-go portfolio, which is kind of like David mentioned, capturing those images from my mobile devices. And I've even got one of my recent shoots, actually from a couple years ago. It's Antelope Canyon, and some of my favorite shots are in there, including an architecture collection as well. And in this particular collection, I see an image that could use a little work. And while I can do non-destructive editing right here in Lightroom, sometimes I just need the power of Photoshop to go further. So with a keyboard shortcut, I can go ahead and jump right over to Photoshop, edit that file, and there it is. Now, in this case, I'd love to use some of that Adobe magic. I'd love to use the new perspective warp. As you can see on the sides, the building's kind of caving in on itself, just from the perspective of that lens. Let's go in and go to our edit menu, come down to perspective warp, and I even get a little guide instructing me. Some of you say Photoshop's too hard, so we're helping you out. We're showing you what to do. But you can turn it off once you know how to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the first guide, and then I'll pull out the next guide. And as soon as I get that little lightsaber effect in the middle, they're joined together. Now I can teach Photoshop the current perspective of this, because to Photoshop, this is nothing more than a series of pixels. So I'm just going to go in, tell it, hey, this is what it looks like to my eye right now. Let's go ahead and fix the bottom. And so now that I've told Photoshop what the perspective is, I just simply switch modes over to warp, and now I can actually go in and correct it. So for example, I can just go ahead and fix it on the sides and actually fix the building. And if I even wanted to go crazy, what if I wanted to see it from the other side? What if I wanted to see it from the movie Inception? I can do that as well. So, now, of course, I don't want to leave it in this kind of distorted state, but I'll go ahead and click OK. I've got a more corrected version here. We'll save that one. We'll close it. And as soon as I return back to Lightroom, it's already there. It's already updated.
Right. And what Terry just showed was, first of all, a new feature in Photoshop, Perspective Warp, which I think has a remarkable amount of potential. But the other thing was the desktop-to-desktop workflow that Lightroom has gotten to be so well known for and so efficient at.
Right.
But now, with mobile,
I don't always have my computer or even my laptop with me, but I always have a mobile device with me. And although to date, we're managing over 100 billion photos in Lightroom on the desktop to date. That's 100 billion photos being managed by all of you. I sometimes need to take some of my favorites with me. So now with Lightroom Mobile, which we recently introduced, you'll notice on the left-hand corner here, I've got the ability to simply enable a checkbox. And now those photos in that collection, whichever, how many of there are, 10 or 10,000, are now being synced up to Creative Cloud. But we're not syncing your raw files. We're not syncing the big, heavy files that would take forever. We're doing something intelligent. We have something called Smart Previews, which we introduced in Lightroom 5. And those Smart Previews are the full fidelity for the editing purpose and the viewing purpose and even the exporting purpose for you to take with you and still have the link back to the original raw files on the desktop. So let's head over to the iPad. I'll move it over here. And on the iPad, I've got Lightroom running. And if we scroll up, it's already bringing in that favorites collection. That collection will continue to add photos to it behind the scenes. I don't have to do anything on the iPad other than just launch Lightroom. Now that I've got it here, I can actually go through my photos. I can go through this collection, but I notice this collection looks a little different than the one I saw on the desktop. It's not in the same order. Well, now, as of today, with the update to Lightroom Mobile or Lightroom for iPad, we have the ability to sort in a custom order. So now that puts it in the same order that was on the desktop. So I don't have to worry about them not being in the same order. OK, so with that, I want to go ahead and do a review. And of course, I can swipe through. I can tap to hide the Lightroom interface so I get the full beauty of my photos. If there's a photo I like, I can swipe up to mark it a pick. If there's a photo that I'm not too crazy about, I kind of like that one. Maybe this one, not so crazy about, I can mark it as a reject. And now, as of today, we heard you loud and clear that pick flags are great, but what you really wanted was star ratings. So if I just tap, I can now switch to star ratings, and I can just swipe up to make that a 4-star, 5-star, 3-star photo. And I'm not just doing this on the iPad. Those are syncing back up to Creative Cloud and then down to the desktop. So when I get there, the same photos I reviewed have been reviewed on my desktop. Now, whoa, wait a minute. This photo, right now, it's maybe a 1-star. Let's make it a 5-star. Let's go in. First of all, the sky is completely blown out, and while I could use some Photoshop magic to replace the sky, let's not cheat. Let's just make it so you don't see the sky. All right, so now that I've done that, here, let me pull it down. Now that I've done that, the next thing I want to do is actually do some adjustments, because the sky's gone, but the image is still kind of washed out. So what I'd love to do is use some of the same adjustments that I have in Lightroom on the desktop. We'll go ahead and darken it. We'll increase the contrast. We'll increase the highlights.
While Terry's doing the rest of these, it's super important to realize that this technology that he's adjusting is running the same technology that's running on the desktop. It's not a rough approximation. It's the same technology on the desktop now running on your mobile device.
And my last favorite one here, we'll do saturation. Since this is a landscape, we can really crank up the saturation, get the nice blues in the water, the nice oranges in the mountain. And if you ever doubted what you were doing, just hold down 3 fingers, and you can see your before and your after just that easily. Now, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that those changes are those non-destructive changes, not the photo, just the changes are being synced up to the cloud and back down to the original raw file on the desktop. All right, this is great. I love having Lightroom on my iPad, but I don't always have my iPad with me. I always have my iPhone with me. So today, we're introducing Lightroom for iPhone. And of course, it always starts with a photo. So let's go ahead and bring up the camera. David, can I get you to join me?
Excited.
They say men should never take selfies, but we're going to. All right, so we got our selfie there. And of course, that one went onto the camera roll. So all I have to do is, because I've got Lightroom set up for the on-the-go collection to auto-import, all I have to do is bring up Lightroom, and it will auto-import that selfie right there. And you notice that the corrected photo from Horseshoe Bend is already there. It's already synced. I just pulled this out of my pocket, and there it was. So we'll go to the selfie, and we'll do a little work here. We're going to crop this. I could probably crop myself out. That would be a much better job, but let's go ahead and do that. And last but not least, I'd love to do an adjustment, but not an adjustment. I actually like to use a preset. And I don't want to have to think about the presets. These are the same presets that I would use on the desktop. So if I go to Creative, since we're kind of old school, we can go old school with the sepia tone, and there we are. And that will sync that change up to Creative Cloud and then back down to the mobile devices and, of course, the desktop. Now I'm going to get out, or actually before I get out of it, last but not least, what if I wanted to share this? This is a big event today. I might want to put this on Facebook. Not every day I get to pose with David. So we'll go ahead and do a share. And here it is. I can post it Facebook, Twitter, Flickr. And by the way, for those of you who doubt mobile phones, the iPhone is the most used camera on Flickr of all cameras. Not smartphones, all cameras, period. So mobile's important. And that's it. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. I absolutely love those workflows, although please don't call me old school again. So truly integrated workflows across desktop, mobile, and web, full non-destructive edits that update your original RAW files, and all supported by the Creative Cloud services, the most efficient way to manage your photography through the cloud and across devices. And we've always set the bar for quality and reliability since the early days of digital photography. So today, I couldn't be happier to announce that we're raising the bar again and introduce you to a new Creative Cloud plan, Creative Cloud for Photography. As part of this plan, you get Photoshop and Lightroom on the desktop. You get Lightroom on iPad, iPhone, and the web. And you get that photo technology, that optimized photo cloud service technology under the covers. This is the industry-leading solution. And given that we see this incredible burst of interest in photography, we wanted to make sure that the world's best technology was available to everyone. And so I'd like to announce that today, the Creative Cloud Photography Plan is available for $9.99 a month. This is not a promotional plan. This is the offer, and this is the price. There's absolutely nothing else on the market that offers this much power at any price. So what you probably noticed is we snuck in from our desktop applications over to mobile applications. And what you saw with Lightroom was a great example of how mobile apps can be used as part of a pro workflow. So let's take a look at a few more examples. And we're going to now introduce you to a new family of apps we call Creative Cloud Connected Mobile Apps. Lightroom Mobile was the first. But all of these Creative Cloud Connected apps follow the same basic principles. First, they're built using the 25 years of science we've developed while building our desktop applications. Not rough approximations, not best guesses, the same science. Second, they give you access to all of your content, whether they're edited first on a desktop, mobile, or web. Third, they extend your desktop workflows. Mobile apps don't have to be this random silo on the side. Anything you start in your mobile app should be perfectible on your desktop. So all of these Creative Cloud Connected mobile apps work with those basic principles. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our next mobile app, Adobe Sketch. Sketch is a free-form drawing app, and we wanted to bring the intimacy and the responsiveness of the physical world to your devices. The team leveraged years and years of research that we had done on the best mark-making technology to capture the qualities of drawing in a notebook. So let's take a look, and I'd like to invite up Eric Snowden.
Welcome, Eric. David, thank you very much. Let me plug this guy in here. So I'm really excited to show off Adobe Sketch for the very first time. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the application. So when you think of Sketch, I think there are two key things we've really focused on. One is beautiful, natural marks. We looked at pens, pencils, markers, the things that artists and designers have used their entire lives, and tried to get as close to that feeling as possible in the digital form. And I think the second key is social connectivity. So we've taken bits of Behance and other social networks and integrated them incredibly deeply into the application. Everything is connected. And Community Sketches, when you launch the app for the first time, is the first manifestation of that. So you'll notice there's a grid here of work. If I click on a piece, this is actually a piece done in Sketch, and it's pulling live from the Behance website. You can see as I scroll through this project, from beginning to end, you can see the sort of the process this artist is working through. And I can go ahead and follow this person. Kendall's actually an Adobe employee, a really great illustrator. And so by following her, I'll get emails every time she posts new work. If I have the Behance application, I'll get push notifications. I'll get just awareness of everything she's doing as she's creating.
Now, for those of you who don't know about Behance, it's a little hard to believe given the size. We have about over 3 million members on Behance. It's the world's largest creative social network. Really rich and really vibrant social network on the web. And for the first time, we're now saying that that is going to get integrated deeply into all of our mobile applications and increasingly into our desktop applications, so you're not creating alone in isolation.
Right, and not just Behance integration. If I open up the settings panel here, you'll see that this is connected to my Adobe ID, to my creative identity. It's connected to Creative Cloud, all of my assets, all of my colors. Every aspect of this application is really connected. So as I scroll through here, I'm going to find one of my sketchbooks. And so this is actually a project that has 14 sketches in it. It's something I've been working on over the last few months in varying different stages. And I'm going to actually show what the drawing tools look like inside of Sketch. So I've got a pressure-sensitive pen connected. If I make really, really light marks, and then the harder I press, I can get darker marks. I can start layering marks on top of each other. And if I zoom in, you'll really notice like we've mimicked the look and the feel of graphite very, very closely. We've got a beautiful pen tool that creates very consistent, fluid marks. But I think things start to get really interesting once we jump into our markers. We've got this beautiful watercolor blending technology. It's picking up texture from the paper. It's overlaying. The more I press, the darker the colors get. And once I start selecting multiple colors, you'll start to notice some really interesting things happen as purples and blues, and then I'll go ahead and grab an orange and a yellow. You'll start to see just how these colors can actually blend together. You'll notice this really vibrant green is the yellow and the blues mixed together. And these work with all of our tools. So the color blending technology is just based on this really amazing watercolor engine the team is working on for a really, really long time. So it's something we're excited about. This is obviously not my best composition. So at any point, I can actually undo anything I've done. So if I push 3 fingers down on the screen, I can scrub backwards and forward through my history.
This is really important.
We actually...
Your clapping is like Scooby snacks to us.
Right,
So
yes,
keep it coming.
more and more. So we, every single mark you make, we're remembering over time. You close the sketch, you come back months later. You can scrub back and forth through the history and see.
Yeah, and this is a foundation, again, of all our mobile applications. You saw it with here with in terms of Infinite Undo. You saw it in the context of Lightroom Mobile with non-destructive editing. You should always be able to get back and forth between your work.
Right, and we want to make sure that you feel free to experiment and try new things and not worry about making a mistake. There are no mistakes. You can easily undo anything. So I'm going to jump into a sketch that's a little bit more complete. So this isn't a finished composition by any means, but it's something I feel pretty good about, and I'm ready to share with my community on Behance. So if I go ahead and click this share button, the first item in this menu is get feedback. And what this is going to do is it pops up a dialog, pre-fills a bunch of information. What do you think? And with one click, I can go ahead and publish this to Behance. So what this is going to do is taking a snapshot of this image, it's sharing out to Behance. Anyone who follows me on the network will get a notification. I can augment that by also sending it to Facebook and Twitter and other social networks and getting everyone who follows me on any network to see this sketch as it gets published and really start getting engagement around the work I'm doing. So this work is live. I'm going to go ahead and click out the X, and you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there's a new comment icon that has popped up. So that's showing me that this has been shared. And we've put it in the navigation. We wanted to get it out of the way so that as you're working, it's not interrupting you as you're working on your illustration. But we also want to make it available to you so you can get feedback. You can see what other people are saying about your work as you're creating it, having this two-way conversation as you're working. If I go ahead and click on this icon, you'll see the sketch at the moment when I published it. As people start commenting, they'll flow in, and I can actually respond to comments in line in my sketch as they're being made. Also, within that share menu, there's something pretty interesting going on. We have send to Photoshop and send to Illustrator. So we see these mobile tools as the start of a workflow. You can really do amazing things with this application, but there are times where you just want to take it to Photoshop and Illustrator to finish. So if I go ahead and click send to Photoshop, it, again, takes a snapshot of this image. It's sending it to Creative Cloud. You'll see sent. And then after it's sent to Creative Cloud, it opens up in Photoshop. I can continue to work. There's no saving to my camera roll, emailing to myself. It's one click. It sends over to Creative Cloud, sends to Photoshop, opens it up, and I can continue working. So something we're pretty excited about as far as workflow. The last... So the last thing I want to show, we have I have a collection of sketches that I've been working on here, and I want to publish this out as a finished project to Behance. I'm at a point where I want it in my portfolio. So if I go ahead and click Share, it's going to take every sketch within this project and linearize it. So I've got all these sketches here. With a couple clicks, continue. I select a cover, continue again. I can add a project description. Behind the scenes, we've actually been building a Behance project without you knowing it. All the information you've entered, all the sketches you've done, all the organization you've done carries over to Behance. With a couple clicks, we can publish. And once that's published, there's opportunity for it to be pulled back into the community sketches. We have curators who are looking at every single piece published from Sketch that are going to be powering this gallery and really trying to show everyone who's using the application the best of the best work that's being created with it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thank you.
So absolutely beautiful marks. I love that pencil so much. I took it home and I showed it to my kids. They fell in love with it immediately. Beautiful marks, great blending, connected to your Creative Cloud, your identity, your content, your social network, all integrated deeply into the application. But here's the really fun part. Every great drawing application, in my opinion, deserves a great pen. And a year ago, I shared with you at Adobe Max an experiment that the team was working on, a Creative Cloud connected pen and ruler. We called it Mighty and Napoleon. And in that year, since we talked about it for the first time, the team has been incredibly hard at work creating a precision tip. So when you draw a line, it appears exactly where you wanted that line to draw, perfecting how it feels in your hands, and tuning the resistance on that tip. So drawing on glass feels a little bit more like drawing on paper. And of course, just making it beautiful. So today, I'm excited to announce that Project Mighty and Napoleon are officially moving from exploration to product. I'd like to introduce you to Adobe Ink and Slide. Adobe Ink is a Creative Cloud connected pen, and Adobe Slide is a digital ruler. And they're both deeply connected to the drawing applications we have. Now, we made Ink and Slide so you can create on touch screens with precision, with beauty, and with personality. So let's take a look at Ink and Slide, and in the process, I'd also like to introduce you to our third mobile app, Adobe Line. And I'd like to invite up Jeff Dowd to show that.
Thanks, David. This is Adobe Ink, and it's rad. It's a Creative Cloud pen. It has a fine-point, pressure-sensitive tip with thousands of levels of pressure sensitivity that allow you to draw with precision and personality. It has a hydroformed aluminum triangle-twisted shell that feels insanely great in my hand, in your hand. It's got brilliant multicolor status LEDs on the back that indicate activity and connection. It's just beautiful. It's designed by designers for designers. But this is a Creative Cloud pen. That means it's linked to your Creative Cloud account. This pen is linked to my account. It's very personal. I have my favorite colors, my favorite images and assets at the tip of the pen on any iPad I go to. So we had this hunch that if we designed our own hardware, it would inspire really great software. And it has. So I'd like to show you Adobe Line. This is Line. It's a straight line, or precision drawing app, rather. You can see that I can draw abstract forms that connect precisely, and it's abstract geode. I've got two-point perspective. Architects love this. You can get architectural drawings going really quickly. And they've got a quality assortment and library of built-in shapes and stamps to allow you to be successful on a blank canvas with a double-tap stamp. Now, the UI is very simple. It's based on Graphic Design 101. I'm a graphic designer. I've got pencils, pens, markers as well. And with ink connected over Bluetooth LE, I can draw with precision and beautiful sensitivity like that. And I can see the marks that I'm making. But the real fun happens when you take Ink's sidekick, Adobe Slide, you put him on screen. He's a digital ruler. So I put him on screen, and I hope you can see this, but we've got basically these trace lines that follow Slide around screen. It's like the reinvention of a T-square and triangle. And then anywhere I put ink on the screen, yeah. Thanks for the Scooby snacks. So you can see that for the first time in history, I'm drawing with precision on an iPad.
And you did that really quick, Jeff, but the fact that those lines terminated at exactly the same place speaks to the precision and the guides that you guys put up.
Yeah, I mean, we've really learned on the 30 years of developing Illustrator. I mean, I don't know how old Illustrator is, but many, many years of doing Illustrator, we've learned that that we need to design with precision, and that's been lacking on the touchscreen. So now here we go. Now you'll notice that Slide has a button, and when I tap that button, I can cycle through different shapes: circle, square, triangle, and back to parallel lines again. I love doing the concentric circles because drawing a circle is hard enough as it is. But now I get concentric circles with beautiful drawing guides, and you can see that I've got these amazing smart guides that come up so I can do perfect alignments or even just sections. So really great with jewelry design, fashion design, yeah, all kinds of great stuff. Anything that requires precision. Now, we have a whole library of different stamps and shapes. You can see here that we have French curves. I took a lot of drafting in high school. I really loved drawing cars, and so I wanted to make sure that we had these gorgeous sweeps in here. You can't really draw a car without them. You can see that with pressure sensitivity, you can get these gorgeous marks. So French curves are included. And then again, I mentioned stamps. We have a whole assortment: people, fashion figures, landscaping. Herman Miller, we've got some beautiful Herman Miller chairs in here. And when I put, yep, give it up. So you can see here I can cycle through different chairs. Here's the Aeron chair. I'll pull them up there. And then with a double tap, stamp, you can simply, I've drawn or really stamped that into the canvas quickly for then later tracing.
Now you can put that together with, remember we showed you earlier with the design segment, the Creative Cloud market assets, those over 20,000 assets that we've gone and sourced. You can imagine those making their way into this in the weeks or months ahead. Hint.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that by designing our own hardware would inspire great new software, but we constantly surprise ourselves because it inspired new features within the software. So for example, we made this guy Slide, and we said, well, let's make sure that the app is available to those that don't yet have the hardware, and let's make this guy Touch Slide. He's pretty great. So Touch Slide is the same thing. I can cycle through different shapes. It's got certain benefits, like I can do this, and then with a parallel line, just by moving it over once, I get beautiful parallel lines. And actually, I love sitting back on the couch and using this, holding the iPad with one hand, and then with my same drawing hand, move Touch Slide around. Pretty remarkable. There you go. Not a very great drawing, but you get the idea.
But precise.
Yeah. Very precise. So I mentioned that we have two-point perspective in this app, so I want to show you that. And I'm working on a couple different drawings right now. The way that I like to get my perspective going is with some construction lines, some horizontals, some verticals. And then once I've done that, I tap into perspective mode. I call this Adobe Tron. But essentially, it's a space where I can set up my vanishing points, right? Then also my focal length and viewing angle. And then once I got something I like, I put it down. And then either using Slide or Touch Slide, go back into full screen mode here, you can see that those drawing guides lock in to those vanishing points, and I can draw right up against them. And then my smart guides are very faint. They continue on those planes. I can toggle between the different vanishing points. And I've got the very beginnings of a cube. And that's a very simple drawing. My boss, Michael, does some gorgeous drawings, and this is one of them. I borrowed this from him to do some work on it. And you can see how complicated and beautiful this app can get you going. Architects love this stuff, as I mentioned. Now, we have that history scrubber in here as well, so I can go back in time. And this entire app is built on SVG as architecture. So we can then one day push this to Illustrator for further finish work. I think it's awesome.
It is. They do too.
Thanks. Now back to Ink. Ink has a button. When I press that button over Bluetooth LE, I get the pen tip menu. The pen tip menu is really your window into your ink. You can see here that I have my brushes in full screen mode, and I can augment their different parameters. I can load in different shape packs and stamp packs. Then I can also share directly from Canvas, again in full screen mode. That's the benefit of having this Bluetooth device connected here. But this is a Creative Cloud pen. It's linked to my Creative Cloud account, and these are my favorite color themes and cooler themes. They're coming in from the Creative Cloud through the pen onto this canvas. If I was to go over to your iPad and connect, you'd kick your pen off, my pen would be on, and my pen tip menu with my colors would come onto your screen. It makes for really interesting collaboration experiences. We also have the Cloud Clipboard. The Cloud Clipboard is my favorite little library of things I've copied and pasted around on screen. And I also have my favorites, just the things and elements that I like to reference all the time. In fact, I keep my signature in here so I don't have to do that all the time. I paste it into the background. That one already sized it up. But there you go. You see the background in there. It's there. And then I can go and share this. I think I've already done that on Behance. Yep, you can see I've got some work-in-progress comments in here. So this app is connected as well. It goes right to your whip, and you can see that in real time, people like Scott Belsky are commenting. That's pretty cool. I can go back to my drawing, and there it is. So really, what you have here is a wonderful new app called Adobe Line that's inspired by our exploration and development of hardware, which is just a wonderful thing. And I think that together, Sketch and Line with Ink and Slide, together these make real tools for drawing.
Great.
I'm just totally excited.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
All right, Adobe Line gives you precise lines, curves, shapes, perspective grid. It gives you guided alignment guides. It gives you connection to Creative Cloud, your identity again, your content integrated into the social network. And both apps, Sketch and Line, work and are made even better with Adobe Ink and Adobe Slide. So I couldn't be prouder to announce today that Ink and Slide are officially available today on adobe.com. We set out to create the world's best pen, and I believe we've done exactly that. So now we have a lot going on. How are you guys doing? Can you stick around for 2 more demos? Yeah? All right. You're not getting bored. Good. So a lot going on in mobile. Lightroom Mobile, Sketch, Line, and Ink and Slide. But before we wrap up the mobile section, I wanted to share one more Creative Cloud mobile app. The top request that we get for a mobile companion app is to Photoshop. But as you know, Photoshop does a lot of things. It's an image compositing tool. It's a graphic design tool. It's a web design tool. It's a painting tool, just to name a few. And as you see from the drawing applications, our philosophy for our mobile apps is to keep them focused and task-oriented. So we decided to start with the 2 most common tasks in Photoshop. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Adobe Photoshop Mix, a precise compositing and masking app. And I'd like to have Brian O'Neill Hughes come up and show us.
Thank you, David. I am extremely excited to show Mix to you. I think it's a fantastic example of exactly what you're talking about. Deep Creative Cloud integration and a lot of power from Photoshop. Let's take a look. The very first thing that I want to talk about here is access to your files. So getting to your files is really important, and we heard that a lot. And I can get to any of my JPEGs here. I could get to any of my PSDs, as I'll talk about in a moment, even components of those PSDs. As Terry talked about earlier, with Lightroom Mobile, I can get to my thousands, tens of thousands of images there. I can even get to my Facebook files, my mobile uploads there, anything I've ever posted to Facebook, anything I've ever posted to Instagram. I can get to that here as well. So I can get access to my stuff wherever it is. But editing is really what this application is all about, powerful editing. And for that, we're borrowing the engine from Lightroom and Photoshop. And you get really, really powerful controls here. So I've applied a quick effect there. And then we'll come into our looks. Now, what's great about these looks is they're truly contextual. Anything I did in Enhance is reflected in these presets. These are rich, powerful, beautiful presets that are made up of dozens of different controls in our desktop apps. But it's what we can do with them in Mix that's really unique. So I can start to drag on the image here and selectively edit this.
And you can see he's making that mask with his finger. Look at the precision around that flower.
I can get a really, really, really great result there. I can commit that. Let's say I want to crop it. Apply that. Now, what's really powerful here is I don't need to know anything about masks or selections or layers, but I can enjoy the benefits of them. So if I decide I want to come in here, zoom in a bit, and return some color to this image, I can just bring that right back in, and the dynamics of the brush are tied to the zoom, which is to say that it gets more precise as I zoom in. Now, if I wanted to change this back to color, I could make the whole image color at this point. If I wanted to undo the crop, I could undo the crop at any point I want. It's completely flexible. It's completely non-destructive. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. That's a pretty easy image to make a selection of. So let's look at something a little more challenging. Let's look at something a lot more challenging. I don't think you can come up with a tougher image than fur and hair, right? For a number of reasons, that's a nightmare image. But that's my little boy, so that's especially. But what we want to do is try to isolate this. OK, so I'm just going to drag my finger over this. And I'll quickly see that we can get a really, really amazing mask from that, right? Now let's talk about this for just a second. Other folks have tried to do this in the mobile space, and they get a result like that, right? They get a result with a hard edge. I like to think of this little refine edge slider as an us and them slider. This is what Adobe's doing. This is what other folks have tried to do. And there's a dramatic difference. There's a really dramatic difference in the results. And there's a dramatic difference in what you can do with the file, because I can pass that over to Photoshop from here. It would go in there as a masked, layered file. I could save it to Behance. I could do some really powerful things with that. Now, where it gets even more interesting is if we combine that technology with problem solving for a common problem. So here I've got the background that I want, but I want to drop in a different foreground. Well, that's really easy. I just click on the plus, choose the image I want to drop in the foreground, go into cutout, make a vague notion of what I want, and there it is, right? I apply that, and let's say I want to change a part of it. I want to make that sky bigger. I tap on the sky. I've selected that. I make it larger. I want to change the look of that sky. I come in here. I choose the preset I want. The sky changes.
And you've applied that preset just to the background image, the sky, and not the foreground. So you get that kind of level of control, too.
That's right. By the same notion, I'll just tap the foreground and say, I want to change that. Come in here to enhance, and I'll just trust auto entirely. Does a great job. I commit that. Again, I could send this over to Photoshop. In this case, it wouldn't just be masked, but it would be layered as well. I'd have two images going over to Photoshop. Now, let's assume you don't have Photoshop, because we really want people to be able to do these things no matter what. And I'm going to preface this one. So we've talked about the Creative Cloud for storage, Lightroom Mobile, Creative Cloud files. We've talked about it as a way of translating files into a language that Photoshop understands. But let's talk about magic, right? Let's talk about leveraging Photoshop's magic in a place that we're not used to having it on a mobile device. So powerful features like upright, shake reduction, and content-aware fill that have only been available on the desktop are available in Mix. And we're doing something really unique to facilitate that. Let me just show you what happens here. I select this dog here. I hit Fill, and Mix sends the asset up to Creative Cloud and processes the file in Creative Cloud and returns the result here. The dog disappears from the beach.
And one of the things we learned in doing this is that there's a lot more compute in the cloud than there is on your desktop. So what we were really excited to see was the results were even better on mobile than on the desktop at times.
That's right. So if I were to choose upright, I would get multiple results, and I could just choose the one that I want. Let's take a look at those files over here in Photoshop. So here's the image of the cat. And let's just take a quick look at the mask. It's a good mask. It's really pretty incredible what I could do with just my fingertip. But of course, in Photoshop, I can take it quite a bit further. I could click on Smart Radius, and I could pull out individual strands of hair. Now, that was an image that I shot with an iPhone 3G years ago, and I'm yielding individual strands of hair from that. So really impressive result there. Let's look at our other image, our composite. Let's zoom in a little bit more here and check out the mask on that one. OK, so let's see what Smart Radius can do there. Individual lines, barbed wire, leaves. There is one other problem with this image. And if we look at it on black, we'll see there's some color contamination. You can see it over there, especially on the right. But again, this is one of those things that I can fix in Photoshop that I couldn't fix anywhere else. And I'll just click OK there, Command-Z for before and after. Really great combination of those tools working together.
And one other thing to point out, you took that picture, you composited here, you created a PSD on your mobile device, and you shared it with Photoshop, that's a high-res PSD now.
That's a full-res layered mass PSD that Mix converted with the Creative Cloud. Now, what's cool is I can bring them into Mix as well. So for the last thing, let me show you what that looks like over here. We'll use our image of the beach. I should mention, everything we've done here, we have a project for. These are all files that show us everything we've worked on, and I can revisit them at any point. So here's my beach, minus the dog, and I want to drop in a layered file that I created in Photoshop and saved to Creative Cloud. It's got a bunch of layers. I'm just going to hit plus. I'm going to come to Creative Cloud. I'm going to choose my folder with my layered files, take my professional photographer with his enormous 800mm lens, and I've got two options here. I could use the full image, or I could extract layers from the PSD. I choose to do that, and it says just circle the one you want. There it is. I've got a bunch of different layers there. I'll take him right there and just drop him onto the beach like so.
And that is a huge deal. Just to sort of put a seems like you get it, but I'll say it anyway. It's a huge deal because PSD files, there are millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of PSD files out there that have been completely dark on mobile. You can't use them, you can't access them, you can't do anything interesting. Now suddenly all of those files become data sources that you can remix into your mobile applications and content.
Absolutely, deeply connected to Photoshop, and that's Photoshop Mix. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. All right, so real Photoshop technology running on a tablet, precise compositing and masking, round-trip workflows with Photoshop on the desktop, connected to your Creative Cloud, your identity, your content, your community and network, and connected for cloud processing for the tasks that are just too computationally expensive to do on a mobile device. Huge, huge step forward there. Now, these are the mobile apps that we wanted to share with you today. And I'm excited to say they're all available for free in the App Store right now. So you can go get them and start playing with them. We can't wait to see what you do with them, but I do have one promise, which is we're just getting started. There's a lot more coming down the path here. And that's because there's more here than meets the eye. All of these apps were built with a common set of components and services that include our most powerful creative technologies from the 25 years of work we've done on the desktop. 25 years of imaging, video, and illustration are being packaged into something we call the Creative SDK. The Creative SDK allows us to build those focused applications, those task-oriented applications for mobile really quickly, and we're going to do just that over the next few months across illustration, across video, across photography, across web, and a lot more. And we'll be sharing a lot more of this with you at Adobe Max in just a few months. But we think that this is way too exciting to keep bottled up for Adobe ourselves. And this is actually one of the reasons we made the move to Creative Cloud, because we wanted to open our technology up to the world. So I'm happy to announce that we're making the Creative SDK available to any developer interested in building mobile apps or hardware using our creative technologies. Our private beta is already underway, and you can learn a lot more just by going to the URL behind me. And we're really interested and excited about the interest we've seen with third-party developers wanting to build on top of the technology we just showed you. All right, so big milestone for our Creative Cloud desktop apps, a new and rapidly growing family of mobile apps. And I just wanted to close quickly by saying we're also launching a whole new experience that ties together our Creative Cloud services and connects you to your identity, your apps, your assets, your community through the web browser as well. And for that, I'd like to invite up Jane Brady to show us what we're doing there.
Hi, thanks, David. So you've already seen the Creative Cloud services in action today throughout all of the demos. What I'm going to show you is the new Adobe.com experience, which brings it all together. So this is a single destination where you can access your creative apps, assets, and community. I'm in a browser. I'm on Adobe.com, and I've signed into my Creative Cloud account, which is why I can see this account panel here on the left. And being launch day, the first thing I want to do is check out what's new. So this is a single place where I can find everything I need to know about all the desktop apps. I can download the latest version, find learning and support information, and, of course, find out what's new. Now, David said earlier that we have shipped almost 1,000 new features in the desktop app since we first released Creative Cloud. That's a lot of stuff for you guys to try out. So what you'll find here is a list of everything that we've released today, as well as a list of all the features that we've added in previous releases. So a single place for you to come and find out everything that's new in the desktop apps. OK, let's have a look at our assets. So I've been working on a project with the two Pauls who were out here earlier, and they've given me access to their shared folder. And what that means is that I'm, again, using my browser to look at the assets that they're working on. So I can see the very latest version of the files. And this is an Illustrator file that I'm looking at in the browser. I can also check out the layers. I can turn on and off the layers. So this is a really, really easy way for me to keep track of a project when I'm working with lots and lots of other people. So.
And we breezed through it earlier, but when Paul and Paul were up here earlier and they were sharing those files, what they were really showing off was the fact that now, in addition to file synchronization for personal use with Creative Cloud, every file that's in a folder, every folder can be marked as a shared folder, and you can collaborate with multiple people. And Jane was part of that folder. And the big difference here is we know these file formats. So when someone goes and looks at this, if you share this with someone that doesn't happen to have Illustrator installed, they can still view that full fidelity Illustrator file.
OK. The other thing you'll notice up here is that this little icon is following me around. And regardless of where I am on the site, I can switch between my services as well. So the other thing that I've been working on is getting started on our fall campaign. And what we're looking at here, I've received a bunch of images from our photographer. I've created a collection of those images in Lightroom, and then I've synced that collection to Creative Cloud. So this is where they are in Creative Cloud in the browser. The other thing I did while I was in Lightroom was I flagged the ones that I think we're going to use in our layout. And I can also go ahead now and share these. So if I want to send them over to the designers so that they can start working on layouts, it's as simple as sending a link. So whether I need to get a group of images to somebody inside or outside of the company, this is a really easy way to do that. The other thing we're going to want to do is think about what fonts we're going to use in the fall campaign.
And while Jane's going there, she mentioned this, but again, worth re-mentioning, that identity, that creative identity, this is something that we're really bringing to the forefront with this release. And whatever property you go to, whatever Creative Cloud property you land on or are using, whether it's Lightroom in the web browser, whether it's our files, or whether it's Typekit fonts or Behance, your identity follows you around. And with a single click, you can easily navigate to any of the other properties.
Exactly. And David or Paul, somebody mentioned earlier the thousands of fonts that are included in your Creative Cloud membership. So I want to use one of these fonts for our next campaign. I know that this campaign is going to have both a print and a web component. So I need to make sure that I'm choosing a font that has both web and desktop use. So once I decide what font I want to use, it's really this simple. Sync selected fonts. Those fonts are now synced to my desktop and available for me to use in any of my desktop apps. Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, it'll be there in the font menu as soon as I open those apps. It's really never been that easy. And the last thing I want to do is head over to our creative network. I want to find an illustrator to work with for this next campaign as well. And Behance is an amazing place for discovering new talent. There's tons of different, under the discovery section, there's tons of ways that I can search and explore for different people and just look for different people in my network that I want to work with. The other thing that's awesome about Behance is the ability to give and receive feedback. So you saw Eric earlier working on some sketches in one of the mobile apps, and he published a work in progress to Behance. I've already gone ahead and commented. I'm not going to go stalkerish on him, but but you can see that it's very easy for you to connect with people and generally just work with some really awesome people. So that's a very quick tour of the new Adobe.com experience, a single place where you can get access to your creative apps, assets, and community.
Great. Thank you, Jane. All right, so we talked about the desktop apps, we talked about the mobile apps, and this shows you the power of Creative Cloud, giving you access to all of those assets that you're working on, even from your web browser. So I've been at Adobe now for 12 years. And I can honestly say that I do not remember another day that we announced so many things all at one time. Major updates to all of our CC desktop applications, nearly 1,000 updates across video, design, imaging, and web. A whole new Creative Cloud plan with Creative Cloud for Photography that gives you Photoshop and Lightroom on the desktop and gives you Lightroom on mobile and web, in addition to all of that infrastructure that Jane just showed that ties it all together. A whole new family of mobile apps with Lightroom Mobile, Line, Sketch, and Photoshop Mix, and hardware that enables you to do even more with the drawing apps with Ink and Slide. A creative SDK that invites third-party developers to come in and build and extend the value you get from Creative Cloud, and a new integrated web experience that's tying it all together. All of this is the 2014 release of Creative Cloud, and all of this will be available to you today. So if you're already one of the 2.3 million members in Creative Cloud, guess what? You don't have to do anything. Just start using it. You don't owe us any money. You don't have to go sign up for anything. You can just start using all of this technology today. And if you're not a member, join us. Sign up and try it for free. Just go to adobe.com. It's a really beautiful, streamlined experience that we're going live with later today, and get started. And if you're an enterprise customer or in a government agency or an educational institution, ask about Creative Cloud for Enterprises. And we'll talk about how Creative Cloud for Enterprises also includes things like our digital publishing suite and our Video Anywhere technology for more heavyweight lifting of video across the network, or our integration into Marketing Cloud. So with that, I want to thank you guys for taking the time, and to the tens of thousands of you guys watching online, thank you for taking the time for joining us, and thank you for making Creative Cloud a success and giving us all of your feedback.